Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as I give you an update on my winter sown lupin and what's next for them. So let's go. On December 24th, together we winter sowed a bunch of lupin seeds. If you missed that video, I'll put a link to it down in the description below. Today is June 12th and my lupin seedlings are looking gorgeous. They are ready to come out of their containers. I absolutely love lupin. In fact, I have a beautiful patch of lupin out in my front yard in what I call my bay window bed. It looks so pretty when it first started blooming. In fact, there are still plenty of blooms on the plant. A lot of people struggle when it comes to growing lupin, and I understand. It's not the easiest plant to grow from seed. What I will say is, in terms of getting the plant to germinate from seed is not the tricky part. It's more transplanting it and getting it to survive a number of seasons. Today's video is going to show you my process on what I do next with the seedlings. I will share I have a backyard plant nursery, so I like to sell a lot of my plants. I also like to put plants in my landscape, but I'm going to be showing you how I take these seedlings and how I pot them up. You can definitely do the same process, but instead of potting them up, you can take the seedlings and put them out in your landscape. If you are going to pot up your seedlings, I recommend putting them in a shaded area for a number of days, just so they can bounce back from the stress. If you're going to take your seedlings and put them out in your landscape, then you definitely want to do it on a cloudy, rainy day where it's going to be like that for a number of days, just so the plants can bounce back a little bit easier. There are a number of different lupin out there. They come in a lot of different colors. Oftentimes you'll find ones that are hybrid. You'll also find ones that are native. On my channel, I like to just show you how to garden and how to garden on a budget. I don't want to get into too many details when it comes to native versus non-native and the benefits of growing one versus the other. At the end of the day, I feel strongly that your garden is your garden and you should be able to garden however you want. Because I sell a lot of plants, there's been a lot of interest in the native variety of lupin. That native variety is called Lupinus perennis. If you do want to know more information on the native variety of lupin, how to tell the difference between native versus non-native, as well as the Carner butterfly and how it depends on the native perennial of lupin, I'll put a few links to some great websites down below in the description. I want to show you the first milk jug. Look how many lupin seedlings are in there. A common misconception is that it's very hard to transplant winter sown lupin seedlings. It's really not that bad at all. When you think about it, the plants have already been acclimated to the outdoor temperature conditions. I've had a lot of success when it comes to moving the plants out of their milk jugs and potting them up. But again, the same process that I'm going to show you today would apply if you want to put them out in your landscape. I made sure not to go overboard when it came to winter sowing my lupin seeds. I'll show you why in a minute. I do want to point out there are a few plants like this one, that's a weed. We have this one here, that's lamium. That's also lamium or dead nettle, which is a perennial here where I live. We have alyssum over here, and then a piece of grass over here. That's bound to happen when you winter sow. It is totally okay. I want to show you why I didn't go crazy when it comes to planting too many lupin seeds this year. I have a seedling right there, and as we go in this direction, there are more seedlings tucked in under the peony plant. And as we head this way, you'll see another larger seedling. And then again, over here, we have a few more. We are now in my front yard. This is where my bay window flower bed is. And I'm going to show you another reason why I didn't go too crazy with winter sowing lupin this year. There are more seedlings there. We have more there. We have more everywhere. And you can see that the lupin that are in here are just starting to go by. They put on such a great show, so pretty coupled with the iris. That brings me to my next point. If you've been trying to grow lupin from seed and you've really been struggling with it, as many videos as I've made on lupin, which I'll link down below, I totally get it. You might still not be successful and it's very frustrating. My best advice that I can give you, if that is the case, is to just invest the money, buy a lupin plant. Put it in your landscape, let it bloom, let it go to seed, don't deadhead it, let the seeds drop, but make sure the plant is placed somewhere where you don't mind having a whole bunch of volunteer plants. And trust me, you should have much better success. But that's not the only tip I have. You want to make sure that the soil where the lupin plant is placed is well draining. You also want to make sure that your plant is getting enough sunlight. And don't forget to give the plants plenty of water. I'm all about collecting seeds, starting plants from seed, but I've just heard too many people struggle with trying to get their lupin plants to survive or come back year after year. And again, I think the number one problem that happens is that process of transplanting it. But then not only that, getting the plant to drop its seeds and have a bunch of volunteer plants around it. From my own personal experience, I've seen that the mother plant does not come back year after year. In other words, you might have a beautiful plant for 1 or 2 years. Eventually, that mother plant might disappear, but all the little baby seedlings that have been dropped get bigger, and then those start blooming. So if you can get a nice succession going, similar to a plant like foxglove, let's say, I think that would be your best bet. Now I want to show you my process for potting up the seedlings. I'm using a DIY potting mix, and I've made sure to add extra perlite to it. The reason is I want the soil to be well draining. I don't want the roots of my lupin plants to rot. I'll put a link to the video down below where I show you my process for a DIY potting mix. Just know that in this case, I added even extra perlite. I want to make sure that the soil drains well. When we winter sowed these seeds, I mentioned to you that it's probably better to have the seeds spaced out a little bit so that when the plants come up, the roots aren't tangled with each other. Now, I showed you earlier, I had a winter sown container where I put a whole bunch of seeds in there. That is okay too, but I like to teach everyone that it is better, if you're new to this, to place your seeds a little bit far from each other. If you're new to the whole winter sowing process, I'll add a link to that playlist down in the description below. So I'm trying to loosen up the roots by squeezing the sides of my container. And I'm just pulling out everything that's in the container here. I'm just reusing this pot here. It says Proven Winners, but these are not Proven Winner plants. Look at all the white, that's the perlite. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna fill it about halfway, at least to start with. And the potting mix has been pre-moistened, but we'll be watering these in afterwards after we pot them up. I'm very carefully taking a big chunk right here. And then I'm going to go ahead and place it in my container. This right here is the crown of the plant. You want to make sure you don't bury the crown of the plant. You want the crown to be above soil level. And I'm just going to go ahead and put the potting mix around. And I'm just pushing down lightly. It's a nice cloudy morning so far in this area where I'm working. I'm pushing down, I'm just shaking the pot. And that's what it looks like now that it's potted up. I have a label. It's always good to label your plants. We'll give it a nice drink of water. And then I will place my seedlings in the shade for a number of days just so they can acclimate. Eventually they will get put down in my plant nursery. The reason why I like to use large pots like this is because lupin do not like to have their roots disturbed. So at least while the seedlings are in these pots, it will give them time for their roots to get a little bit bigger. And really they can stay in these pots, I would say, for most of this summer. Sometime in late summer, I'll check on my plants. And if I'm noticing that the roots are coming out from the bottom, I can very carefully take the plants out of these pots and pot them up into something larger. I just want to make sure I'm doing it well before my average last frost date arrives. So again, I'm going to be very careful, and I'm just going to take a nice big piece like this. And when I'm doing that, I'm noticing that I'm still seeing some of the roots. It's okay. Again, a lot of people worry that, oh no, I see a lot of the roots coming out from the bottom. Perfectly fine. The big thing I don't want to do though is take off all of the soil off the roots. I want to try to get as much of the soil as I can. So I can go ahead and just place this in here. What I've noticed is when you have a lupin plant that you've grown from seed, it might take 1, if not 2 seasons before that plant is mature enough to bloom for you. So you definitely want to be patient. The other thing that I've learned is when you do winter sow plants, especially lupin, it's important to get those plants out of their containers sooner than later. You don't want to wait for the whole summer to go by. The plant will go under a lot of stress the longer it's in that container. So I'm left with 2 more here. I'm just being really careful and I'm just pulling them apart. We got a 3rd one done, and we'll do our last one. With this one here, you can see that we see some roots. It is not the end of the world. Again, don't be worried. Just go ahead, get it potted up, and put it in shade and let it just acclimate to the new environment that it's going to be in. When it comes to the milk jug, where I heavily sowed the seeds, I probably have at least 15 plants in that milk jug. I made a video last year showing my process on how I took that many seedlings out of a milk jug. I'll put it in the link below. What I used last year was a spoon, and I basically scooped out each of the plants very carefully. But in that video, the seedlings were much smaller. This year, the seedlings are further along because it's later in the season. So what my plan is to be really careful and just separate the plants as best as I can. I have full faith they should be fine because, again, they were winter sown. Now, when you have plants that you started from seed indoors, sometimes they're not as forgiving. But when you winter sow plants, even lupin, they usually can recover just fine. So here are some seedlings that I got from my backyard plant nursery. These are from last year. I don't know if they were winter sown or if they were seedlings that I dug up from my garden. I have many more down there, but I wanted to show you what they look like when a full season has passed by and what to do next. So here's a seedling that we just potted up today. There's not a huge size difference, but there is a little bit of a difference. The big thing I want to show you is down below. You can see that the roots are coming out from the bottom of this pot. For that reason, it is very important for me to go ahead and pot up this plant. And not only that, you can see there are multiple plants in there. When I planted this, it was only one plant. I do not plan to divide this. I don't want to upset the roots. And here is the other plant. Again, you can see the roots are just coming out. So the process I'm going to show you today for these, I'm going to have to do to all of my seedlings from last year. We're basically bumping this plant up from a smaller pot into a slightly larger pot. So I'm going to fill up my pot. Again, about maybe 1/3 to a halfway. I'm squeezing the side of my pot. I just want to loosen up the roots. Now let's go ahead and take our plant out. And I want you to see how beautiful those roots are in there. Normally, I would tell you to loosen up the roots on a plant. You can do that, but you don't want to be too rough. You want to just barely loosen them up when it comes to your lupin. So I'm just teasing the roots apart just a little bit. And the reason for doing that is so that the roots don't keep circling around. But again, this isn't horrible, so I'm not too worried about it. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to check the depth. I want to have it just as deep as it was in its other pot. Could I put it in a much larger pot than this? I could, but I'm happy with this size pot. It's bigger than what it was in before. Let's go ahead and let's backfill. My plant nursery is large, but I run out of room just like anyone that has a backyard plant nursery does. That's one of the reasons why I don't want to put this in a terribly large pot. I will be checking this, again, late summer, and if the roots are coming out of the bottom, at that time, I can go ahead and bump it up into a larger pot. I just have so many seedlings that are this size that I don't have a lot of real estate in my plant nursery to give up like a very big pot. I'm just pushing down, and I just want to show you the base there. I made sure not to plant this too deep. I'll be sure to give this plant a drink of water. It's going to go in the shade for a few days and then return back to my plant nursery. So there's my update on my winter sown lupin seedlings, what's next for them. And not only that, I wanted to give you an update on some seedlings that I had in my plant nursery that overwintered from last year and what my next steps were for those. Let me know if you have lupin in your yard, and if so, have you winter sown the plants or did you buy them? And what's your secret to growing great lupin in your yard? Please drop them down in the description below. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.